special afternoon briefing. We are honored to introduce three community leaders in California who just received the James Irvine Foundation's 2025 Leadership Awards. Every year, the James Irvine Foundation honors nonprofit leaders who are tackling some of the state's most challenging problems. They're often working too close to the ground to be well known, yet they are advancing innovative solutions, informing policymakers, and inspiring the next generation of leaders. Inviting them today to share their experiences gives EMS and our media partners a rare opportunity to explore how people create change at the community level, how social change works at the grassroots. And this is especially relevant in today's environment when we are confronting unpredictable changes from policy makers at the federal level, changes from the top down that often are in total opposition to the priorities our award winners have set for change at the grassroots. The speakers for today's briefing include Nayamin Martinez, Executive Director of the Central California Environmental Justice Network, based in Fresno. Dr. Kutcha Risling Baldi, Co-Director of the Food Sovereignty Lab and Traditional Ecological Knowledges Institute at Cal Poly Humboldt in Arcata. And Helen Iris Torres, CEO of Hispanis, Organized for Political Equality, also known as HOPE, based in Los Angeles. We will also hear from Cindy Downing, Program Officer for the James Irvine Foundation, about the full list of 2025 James Irvine Foundation Award recipients, the meaning and impact of the awards, and nominations for next year's award recipients. Today's briefing is interpreted in Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean. We ask our speakers to speak slowly as I'm speaking, so our interpreters can keep pace with you. We will send a recording of the session to all participants this afternoon, along with collateral that offers more detail about our speakers and their work. Now let's begin with our first speaker, Nayamin Martinez, again, Executive Director of the Central California Environmental Justice Network in Fresno, where she works to support people disproportionately impacted by air and water pollution, pesticide exposure, and extreme heat. Her work has driven significant policy wins, including California's first statewide pesticide notification system and bans on oil drilling near populated areas. Welcome, Ms. Martinez. Can you begin by telling us how you got involved in this work, something about your own story that led you into this field?
Thank you, Sandy. Buenas tardes, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the James Irvine for this recognition. I'm humbled to share it with amazing women leaders across the state. And a little bit about Nayamin. Who is Nayamin? Nayamin is a very proud Mexican immigrant. something that right now it's been seen as a negative, but I'm very proud of where I come from and who I am. I have been living in Fresno, California for almost 25 years. And since the first time that I got to this country, I have made my mission to help immigrant communities, especially farm workers. Why? Because if you know the Central Valley, you know that that's one of the main occupations of people who look like me, who come from Latin America, who English is our second language or our third language, and who oftentimes are ignored and discarded like we're not important. So the work that I do since I came to the USA 2 weeks into my new home here in the Valley. I start volunteering with the Centro Binacional para el Desarrollo Indígena Oaxaqueño, an organization helping indigenous immigrants. And I did this as a continuation of what I had started doing in my home country. Although I was born in Mexico City, I grew up in a small town in Mexico. And some of the things that I learned from my parents was to help others. I grew up going and volunteering in helping refurbish houses of low-income people. I grew up also knowing that social justice was something that I needed to be part of. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to live in a Zapatista community in Chiapas, to work in Oaxaca and other immigrant communities or indigenous communities, helping them fight human rights violations, something as basic as that. So coming to the States, it was just a continuation of that work that I've been doing in my home country. And it has not been a shortage of things that I could do while I'm here. That included helping immigrants access healthcare. Back in the days when I started working, they did not have access to full scope medical. So that was one of the very first things I did. 3-4 months after I had arrived in Fresno, I was able to get engaged in relocating over 40 Oaxacan families that were living near a supersite fund where Chevron had been poisoning their homes, so the land where their homes were settled, their mobile homes. And these 25 years, that has been my passion, working with immigrants. I am an immigrant myself, and my entire family and friends are in Mexico. So these immigrants that I met 25 years ago became my family. And that's why for me it's not only a job, it's a passion, it's a personal goal, and it's also a lifestyle. My husband, the reason why I came to California following him, is also an immigrant advocate, another leader that is working to protect immigrants. So this is our story, this is our family, and it's more than a job, it's my way of life.
Thank you. Tell us a little, if you had to single out one example of change your organization and your network of people have accomplished, maybe very recently, what would that be as an example?
Yeah, it's hard to put it in just a few words, but one of the things we're proud about is that we have been giving voices and visibility to farm workers. We were able to, in collaboration with the leader of the labor committee in the assembly, to host the very first farm worker hearing in Sacramento just last February of last year. And out of that, there was an audit commission for CalOSHA, so that they could be serving and enforcing regulations better to protect farm workers in their workplace. We were able to also establish, not only, as they said, the setbacks, but also I was able to be part of the Sustainable Pest Management Working Group that drafted a plan that would lead for California to reduce the use of pesticides by 80% in the next 20 years. And I think that's a very important accomplishment here in our valley. And I will just close by saying that CCJ not only advocates for policy changes, we also are working to provide short-term solutions to these environmental problems. We have been able to provide free filters for communities that have water contamination, providing air purifiers to those affected by wildfire smoke, and just in general, balancing that work that you need to do to remediate immediate needs while you work to achieve long-term solutions.
How has this work been affected by the policy changes, especially around immigrants, that the Trump administration is bringing? How are you seeing that impact the farm workers you're working with, and how has it impacted your work?
Well, as everybody knows, raids in our state started even before Trump became president. That happened in Bakersfield, where we have an office. So the fear of these raids and deportations that have been happening is real. It's causing people not being able to show up to work, decreasing their income. It's causing uncertainty of am I going to get deported? What is going to happen to my children? It's causing even economic impacts to the farmers that do not even have right now enough manpower when they're, right now the citrus is the peak season right now. Some farmers in the citrus industry were saying that they didn't have workers. So it's affecting everybody, but more so immigrants. I think it's also impacting organizations like mine that have been working to help immigrants. We are recipients of an environmental protection grant, and that is frozen. And we're just one of many organizations. Food banks that were receiving money from the Department of Food and Agriculture have also gotten their funds frozen. So these vital organizations that were providing food in communities that were struggling already now are going to be limited to provide those safety net services. So it is very disheartening and scary, but I always say that we have been resilient for so many decades that this is just one little stop in our work, but that at least for me motivates me to work harder, but it is impacting our communities.
What would you say, looking at the short-term future, the next couple of months, what is your most important goal looking forward?
For us is educating our community about know your rights. So my organization did a decision of saying others not, and I respect them, but for us, we cannot tell people, okay, let's focus on your cleaning the air or cleaning the water, because if you are afraid right now that you don't know if you're going to be here or and your children are going to be here in the next month or years, that's the priority in people's minds. So we are educating people about their rights. Know your rights. That's the basic thing we could do, provide them with right information, with resources in cases where they're being deported or singled out. So I think that knowledge is power, and we're doing our best to provide that information and resources to our community members.
Thank you. A question from our media in the chat. Are you worried about being direct targets for the new administration?
Yes, I'm worried that we're going to be direct targets because we are an organization that has been fighting for all the things that this administration doesn't believe, climate change being one. We have opposed oil extraction because we believe in clean energies. We have opposed other things that the administration definitely is in support. So sadly, yes, we think we're going to be targeted. But as I said, I think when people try to oppress you, at least many of us feel that is taking or getting the opposite. You get more, like I get frustrated. And when I get frustrated, it's like I'm stubborn. So I'm going to be like, this little pebble in your shoe. So I'm not going to go away, even if this administration is going to do everything in their power, like cutting funding and other things. to try to scare us or shut us down.
What gives you a sense of optimism? California went through a very powerful anti-immigrant 1990s and somehow managed to emerge as a very pro-immigrant state. Are you seeing the kind of support from the wider community? And if so, when you say you've raised the visibility of farm workers, you're really important to the whole narrative of immigrants. What do you tell people who might be very discouraged and feel like there's no use to this because we can't fight the changes coming from the top?
Well, I think we're very privileged that we live in California. Definitely at the state level, they're having a lot of efforts to protect our immigrant communities. I feel hopeful because I see that we can become stronger allies with other minorities that are also being under attack. So we are stronger together. And I think I have received offers of a more closer collaboration from African American leaders, from Native American groups here in the Valley. And I think that's going to give us that strength that we need to be together. And also, as I said, even open to have unusual allies. These farmers are being affected as much as the farm workers. So it's in the best interest of all of us to be together defending their jobs. Because if they don't have agricultural workers, they're not going to have, billions of dollars in income.
Thank you so much, Naomi Martinez. There are questions that are coming in on the chat. Perhaps you take a look at them, and as we proceed with the seminar, maybe address some back in the chat. But please stay with us as we'll have a final round of questions. That was really so helpful. Our next speaker is Dr. Kutcha Risling Baldy, co-director of the Food Sovereignty Lab and Traditional Ecological Knowledges Institute at Cal Poly Humboldt, where with co-director and fellow award recipient Dr. Caitlin Reed, she mentors students in projects promoting Indigenous sovereignty in the ecology, food, and even cultural spheres. Welcome, Dr. Risling Baldy. We're so glad you joined, and we're very anxious to ask you to pronounce for us the formal title of the Food Sovereignty Lab, which I don't want to mess up by trying to pronounce it myself. Could you start with the title and what it means? And then could you share a little bit of your own personal history of how you came to enter this field?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm happy to join you from very far Northern California in what is called Gootdini, or Among the Redwoods in Wiyot country, also currently known as Arcata, California, very far north on the coast. And I am proud to be a part of this lab, which is called the Rot Dalagourd Food Sovereignty Lab and Traditional Ecological Knowledges Institute. Rot Dalagour is a Wiyot phrase, and it was given to us in a process that we did with the local Wiyot peoples, where they voted and decided what they would like to represent this space as, and this one floated to the top. And what it means is everyone works together. And we thought it was a really beautiful way to bring the language into the space, but also to start to name things in a way that really honors the peoples of that place.
Could you tell us a little about those people? Because I think for many of us, not only is the beautiful redwood forests of Humboldt sort of virgin territory, we don't all get to see it, but the people, the indigenous people, the particular groups you're referencing?
Yes, so I was very privileged to be born and raised in very far Northern California amongst the peoples where I come from. I'm Hoopa, Yorick, and Karuk, and enrolled in the Hoopa Valley tribe. And those are three of the largest tribes in California. We are also three of the largest landholders, like in terms of tribal lands in California. Alongside that, I live in Wiyot country or Wiyot territory with the tribes of this region, which include the Wiyot tribe, the Bear River Rancheria, and the Blue Lake Rancheria. And we have there's such amazing spaces to work in up here. I think one thing we like to tell people about is we are Indigenous peoples who they call relatively late in contact. We did not have a massive influx of Westerners or settlers until 1849 with the gold rush. So unlike other parts of the United States or even California, we had a long period of time where we were still exercising and working through our cultural ways of doing things, our ways of living, up until the mid 1800s. The other thing about us is many of us are still in our Aboriginal territories. So we've never been removed, which means we have unbroken connections to our knowledges and our lands. We talk about our Indigenous knowledge, our Indigenous science as being very, very old. I always explain to people when you talk about what it means to have thousands upon thousands of years of scientific experimentation and observation and knowledge of a place, we start from that in terms of our understanding of what it means to build this place for the future, what it means to address ongoing issues, what it means to build climate resiliency. Our knowledge is based on thousands of years of scientific experimentation.
So your work has basically placed indigenous science, the indigenous sciences, for the first time, formal field of study in the academy. Much like ethnic studies were launched at the University of California, Berkeley campus in the late 1960s. Can you talk a little about what that has meant for Native American and Indigenous peoples to see your historic knowledge recognized and validated as a course of study in one of the most important universities in the state?
I do think that one thing people should always think about is that Indigenous that we have that we carried forward, but it's very dynamic and the world, Indigenous environments or Indigenous science. We are botanists, we are biologists, we are ecologists, we are people who understand long-term knowledge about what the world has been, what it could be, and what we need to build for the future. And I think TEK or ITEK has been a really important way for us to demonstrate that when we look at Western conceptions of conservation or preservation or natural resource management, humans are often considered outside of nature. Our knowledge says humans are a part of nature, and one of our jobs is that we need to think about in total how the ecosystem works together, and we need to build a world where everyone can breathe and everyone can drink the water and everyone has the things they need to feel good in this place, and that is possible. And Indigenous peoples know that is possible because we lived that world before colonization. So we can tell you what it looks like when everybody has a house, when everybody has the food they need to eat, when everybody feels good about the way that they live together. And we know that that comes from a connection that you can get to how you work with the land in a relationship rather than just as a resource.
Thank you. A quick question about how the new federal policies aimed at eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, including vocabulary associated with those programs, whether that's having an impact on your program, how you see yourself proceeding and promoting. I loved your description that this isn't about traditional knowledge. This is about current knowledge, evolving knowledge based on foundations over many, many centuries. But how are you dealing with the current changes targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I actually have been speaking with a few of my elders because I think I rely a lot on their perspective of place and time and them reminding me how long Indigenous peoples have been navigating a federal government system that has been trying to control, erase, diminish, and take us apart from like sort of their very first start of agreeing to treaties and then breaking every one of them, agreeing to like the ways in which they were going to provide funding and aspects of like what we needed in Indigenous communities and then not providing it. And they remind me all the time to remember that our elders, our ancestors lived through times like this where it felt dark and heavy and like it was always going to be this way. And even in those moments where it felt the worst, like it was not like what could possibly, how could we possibly walk through this together? They still did what they could to think about the future generations and what they wanted to make sure that they carried forward. And so in times of genocide, they were thinking how, and I always tell this story about how they said, like, I can't remember everything, but I can remember how to make acorns. And I know they made that illegal. There was a time period where they made it illegal for us to make traditional foods. And yet they passed on all of that knowledge, even if there was a government system telling them you can't do that. They were like, we're going to do that. And so my elders reminded me when I was talking to them about what's happening now, they said, Indigenous peoples, we refuse. We say no. We remind each other that it is okay to be like, that is what you have written down in your order. We are going to politely decline to do that because we know what's important coming out the other side. We will continue. We will build our resiliency and our resistance. And I think what's really important about this moment for us is we continue to remind people that we're still here, that we're doing this work, that we don't need that where that work truly comes from is community and community care, that we can care for each other, that we can build things with each other, and that that's the most important thing we can do. And I look back to this moment where I think about what it must have been like as an Indigenous person, being told that we weren't supposed to teach our youth things about our culture, that it was bad for them, that we shouldn't do things for them. And I think about how they did it anyway, and how they did it underground, and how they carried it forward, and how they made sure that we always grew up knowing who we are and where we came from. And I think that's what we can do for each other, is remind each other that whatever is happening on this larger scale, we are a community and we can support each other and we can build really meaningful things, things that really matter, things that push back against what's happening.
Thank you. I think there are important questions in the chat, which it would be wonderful if you could address. And one of them is just to help us understand when you refer to the Wiyot, the Yurok, the Hupa. Many of us are unfamiliar with those tribal identities, and it would be just wonderful to have just a few words. It's not that we're lazy, it's that we're under editorial deadlines, and it would be great to get your input on the chat. Thank you for such inspiring words. Both you and Naomi give much encouragement. And I know our third speaker, Helen Iris Torres, CEO of Hispanias Organized for Political Equality, will be a wonderful third speaker in this panel. Ms. Torres, you run a Los Angeles-based organization with statewide impact that supports Latinas statewide to be civic leaders and advocates for policies that champion economic and political parity. Since you became executive director of HOPE in 2000, you have grown the organization into an impressive network of notable alumni leaders. 61% serve on government boards or commissions. 16% hold or run elected office. That is really an amazing record. Could you share something of your personal story? You know, we're nosy journalists. We like to go beneath the abstraction to the actual people, and we so rarely get a chance to do that. So we'd love to hear, how did you get involved in leadership development?
Thank you so much, Sandy, and to all the journalists on the Zoom. I do want to take just a moment of gratitude and just say how incredibly special this award is for an organization like Hope. I'm very grateful to Cindy and everyone at the James Irvine Foundation. But I always think back about the gift of meeting other incredible women. And what a gift we have to be in company and in community with Dr. Rosalyn Baldy, who I just learned so much from. And then, of course, Naomi, who is a sister in fellowship in the struggles that we both share. So I just wanted to call out that a lot of what we do is so interconnected, right? There is so much that, and I'm constantly learning. But going back to your question, Sandy, about how did I get involved in this organization called Hope and why? And I think that's such an important question. My passion really stems from seeing my mother's experience coming from, she brought myself and my sister as a single mother from Puerto Rico to Detroit, Michigan. It was a monolingual Spanish speaker raising my sister and me, and I had a very serious heart disease growing up. So she had to navigate a public education system that did not provide for my sister to have a bilingual education, and a healthcare system that was very unfriendly, difficult to navigate, and against a society that, quite frankly, discriminated and harassed her for being a single mother. And I was a witness to this. I think we often bear witness to the injustice of the world. And either we can keep bearing witness or we can do something about it. And one of the things I decided to do as soon as I found out that there was this great organization called Hope was to join it as a volunteer back in 1997. So I just turned 56 years old. And if I did my math right, half of my life has been spent on this mission to ensure economic and political parity for Latinas. And it stems from ensuring that the injustices my mother experienced would never be felt or experienced by another Latina or another human being, period, punto fin. That we can create collectively a society that really elevates each of us and that we can meet our human potential and really have big dreams. So that's what motivates me to be an advocate. That's what motivates me to be leading an organization like Hope that really fulfills my passion. It all is around leadership development and civic engagement. And you know that those two things really does develop an economic prosperity agenda for all of us. If done correctly, if you have a table which all leadership voices can be heard and amplified, we can solve anything together.
You mentioned the importance of women representation and the role of women as leaders at the grassroots. Can you say a little more about the fact that the recipients of this year's Leadership Awards all are women, and what that tells us about change at the grassroots? I come out of a generation that really was inspired by people like Malcolm X and Saul Alinsky. They were largely men. And now the importance of women not only holding families together, but leading communities. How do you see that leading us at this particular time? And to what extent will Trump moves to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially also including women representation, how will that impact your work?
Well, I would say, Sandy, first of all, you mentioned some incredible leaders, male leaders. I would challenge that a little bit to say that there's always been women in the forefront. Or at least, they've been always there, but perhaps didn't get the media attention, didn't get the headlines. And that's why I think it's so special to have this group of women leaders today and to be in community with all you journalists so that we can rectify that record, if you will. We need to ensure that our voices are heard because we've always been in community. Community has been dependent on women leaders, often silent leaders, to change the way things were and that need to be change agents today. So I believe in civic participation, and you see it throughout our record. We have these beautiful promotoras that knock on doors and ensure that we're taking care of our health, but are also civic engagement agents throughout the state. That's such a beautiful program that is led by women and really fosters the sisterhood of women. Now, Hope doesn't lead those programs, but we're in all of them, and we have plenty of women within our network that are either promotoras or leading nonprofits that lead promotora programs. So I will always say that we've always been here, but we've never really gotten the accolades. And through the James Irvine Foundation, this is one opportunity to highlight a series of women leaders from various different backgrounds. So I think that's something to be uplifted and to be acknowledged. California is made up of 20% of our population is Latina. And we still continue to face incredible disparities when it comes to pay equity, wealth attainment, health outcomes, and leadership representation. We're very proud of the work that Hope has done to address a lot of those issues. We were very involved with the advocacy to get the Affordable Care Act and the implementation of the Affordable Care Act from an advocacy standpoint. We've been advocating for transparency in wages and salaries to ensure that Latinas understood the jobs that they were applying for and the wages that they should be demanding for those jobs. And we've been very strong, as you mentioned, Sandy, some of our statistics around Latina representation. But that's still a drop in the bucket. I love to highlight it because it's great, but we've got a long road ahead. And I want to echo what Dr. Rosalind Baldi said about this is not a new territory for anyone in which we find ourselves. It is a moment of reflection to say, why are we still here? Why are we back at this moment when we have so much good work still ahead of us? But I truly believe that we repeat history because we haven't learned our lesson. And we have to have strong women at the forefront, reminding everyone of what our history is, reminding everyone about the facts that we've had these similar struggles in the past. And this too will pass, but it will only pass if we are engaged in community and lift up the voices of communities. And if we ensure our place at the decision-making table. And I love the saying, I forgot who said it, but if you're not invited to that table, set up your own table. And that's where we need to be right now. How do we ensure, if you believe in democracy, if you believe in strengthening democracy, how do we ensure that we set up the tables to protect our democracy? And I believe women are going to lead that effort, and they already are.
Great messages for us to share. Thank you, all three of you. I'll now turn to Cindy Downing, the program officer at the James Irvine Foundation, who will talk about the meaning and impact of the awards for the foundation and who the other award recipients are who couldn't join us, but whom EMS will be profiling in separate interviews. And finally, how ethnic media can help the foundation amplify the call for nominations for the 2026 awards. Cindy, I didn't mean to put that all in one big bundle, but maybe you could start with just the personal impact that working with the awards has had for you and how you see the meaning of the awards.
Thank you, Sandy. And excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the incredible work of these outstanding leaders. As Sandy said, I'm Cindy Downing, Program Officer at the James Irvine Foundation. And I came about my evolution to overseeing the Leadership Awards program is one that echoes the themes that Naomi, Kacha, and Helen have shared around support and community, sisterhood, and the power of women leaning into their power and their agency. I started at the foundation in the operational side, doing administrative work, learning as much as I could, taking any opportunity that was available to get into to support programmatic work, and then promote from within, from executive assistant to a program associate to now overseeing the Leadership Awards program. And it is a journey, and it takes a lot of support from institutionally and personally, mentorship from other colleagues internally and externally to get to these positions. And once we arrive in places of proximate power, it's our obligation, I think, to pay that forward and continue that legacy of lifting each other up. So that's a bit of like just my trajectory within the foundation. And sorry.
Please go ahead.
And it's been such an honor, as we just heard, the GIA the Awards program honors leaders who are confronting California's most critical challenges with innovative solutions that help to build up the better future for our state. This year, we were also very proud to recognize Stacy Smith of the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, Shantae Davies-Walk of Black Wellness and Prosperity Center, and Sky Patrick of the LA County Library. They are the other three recipients that fill out this incredible all-women cohort this year. And collectively, these wonderful leaders are really, excuse me, addressing the significant challenges that the state faces with economic uncertainty, social inequities, and a quest for a more inclusive future. It can feel like the times are quite daunting, but in this group we see so much hope, so much resilience, and we continue to see what happens when folks step up with bold solutions and unwavering commitment and truly in today to learn more about each of the leaders at Irvine Awards.
Highlight as possible people to consider.
Yes, we really look to those on the call and on the Zoom to help us drive the spread the word and drive the campaign to really reach out to under-recognized inspiring leaders or pairs of leaders throughout the state who are making meaningful impact. And in order to aid in that process this year, we introduced a new nominations streamlined process to make it easier for community members of all ethnic backgrounds to nominate and empower nominees to share their own stories in using their own words. The initial nomination, which consists now of just 3 short narrative questions, is due March 12th. So there's still time to nominate someone deserving. Following this, nominees who accept the nomination will be providing a more detailed submission by April 30th. This, we hope, will allow them to showcase their work and their impact in ways that are meaningful to them. And
that's great. And we're going to share the nomination forms as collateral with our follow-up information to everybody on the call.
Wonderful, thank you.
Is this the first year that all of the award recipients have been women?
Actually, we're privileged to have this be our second cohort of all female leaders. I believe it was 2019 that we had a group of 5 recipients that were all women. And I say it was time time for another slate of all women leaders, because we know that that women lead so much of the change and are very often under-recognized. And so it is a proud moment for the program to have another slate.
Right. And these awards come with significant financial support. Could you just...
That's right, yeah. The foundation provides each recipient's organization with a grant of $350,000 and helps to amplify their approaches, making connections to policymakers, peers, other funders, and also includes an art project that we component of the program to help them communicate narratives about their work in a very crowded and muddled media landscape. So we're also proud of that aspect of the program that we're able to engage our recipients with.
And what is very striking, I think, about these awards is that they really focus on the work that is impacting people's lives at the grassroots. And that is something that you don't often see in award programs. Very often awards are made to people who've achieved certain success nationally through publication, through a whole variety of things. But the James Irvine Foundation Awards really go to the heart of what community leadership involves. And for that, we're really grateful. I'm going to now go back to our chat, our questions from the chat, and ask our speakers again, including Cindy, for your thoughts. I'd like to begin with Nayamin and then go to our other speakers to respond. What to you is a compelling message to tell the Gen Z, the young people coming up who may feel very discouraged, or, as many of your comments reveal, challenged by the enormity of the changes at the policymaking level, federal government? What advice do you have to young people about the importance of getting involved in grassroots and community leadership and change. And Naomi, maybe you could start.
Sure. I would say that to me is reminding our youth that in this time where it seems that everybody else is making decisions that we don't have a voice on, we do have the power. We have agency. And the only way we're going to have agency if we organize ourselves. If we get together with our vecinos, with our, let's say even a child whose parents are immigrants. These children, these youth should be the voices for their parents that might not speak English. And that if we just remain silo and silent, they're gonna run over us. But we have the power of getting together with people like-minded, have the power to still the right to express our opinions and get together with like-minded people. Even in the valley, where we're in the Central Valley, that we tend to be more conservative, there's people that are still in favor of social justice, of helping minorities. And I think that we don't need to lose track of that. Even if you are undocumented, even if you are a farm worker, we have been very successful in reminding people that they need to know their rights, and that organizing and getting together with others is the best way to respond at this moment. You should not be in your house, in your living room, feeling afraid. That's the least that we can do. And youth people, youth have the opportunity, especially because they have access to social media and technology and other ways, expanding their opportunities.
Thank you. And Dr. Riesling-Baldi, you are interacting with students, not all of whom are Gen Z, but what is your message to young people coming out of or in school and about to enter the world at a time when so many powerful changes are going on? Where does the lone person working at the community level fit?
We tell our young people, sometimes it feels like we're all alone in the things that we want to do and say, but what we need to do first is just start by telling a story about the future that we want to see and the one that we know is possible. Because that is how you begin a process of how we can build futures together, is you tell a story about it and you say it out loud and you claim it for yourself. Because what happens when you start saying out loud, I believe that we can have a world where everyone lives well together. I believe we can have a world where the air is clean and we all have food and we all have a home. I believe we can have a world where we are good here together. We know that that is like the first process of a starting process to let people know that that a bunch of us believe that many of us are here, and start looking for the people who, when you are there saying that, are nodding and smiling, and you're like, yes, there's actually more of us that would rather build a community than aren't. And we have to recognize each other. And we tell people, like, when we tell those stories, when we say it out loud, we start to make it possible. And they know that that's true. I tell people, we know it's true that our voices matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't ban books. That's how we know that our voices matter, because they ban books. So we know that those voices are important. So use your voice to tell your stories.
Use your voice to tell your story. It's great. Thank you. And Helen Torres, what do you tell the young people you're inspiring to become more involved at this particular time? See, have we lost Helen Torres?
Sarah just told me that Helen had to hop off.
Okay. Well, I want to end then with Cindy Downing for the James Irvine Foundation to provide this kind of recognition and validation is itself, as you've heard from our speakers, enormously validating and inspiring. And on behalf of the speakers, our media, and Ethnic Media Services, a shout out to the James Irvine Foundation for creating this program and providing this kind of recognition that often when one feels sort of about to go over the cliff or in free fall, one thinks, recognition and the support of peers, because this is an award that is shaped by nominations by peers. It can be tremendously inspiring. Thank you all. Thank you to our media and our interpreters. And above all, thank you to 3 remarkable award recipients who shared their perspectives with us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Our conference is adjourned.